So, I write the part that gives them everything, and nothing to me? That's what I asked, sitting across the table from my own parents, my laptop open, the cursor blinking between columns of names and assets. They nodded, not with guilt, not with malice, just certainty. It's not personal, Evelyn, my mother said. You're fine. They're not. You've always been the strong one. I looked down at the draft I had written, same one they asked me to help prepare. I had itemized every account, balanced every number, ensured each property was equally represented, because they said they wanted fairness, and now they wanted me to remove my name. My fingers hovered above the keyboard. The legal formatting was still there. My full name, clear as day. Evelyn Moore shall receive, delete, delete, delete. The paragraph disappeared, so did something in me. I didn't think twice when they asked me to help with the will. I'm a CPA. I've drafted hundreds, for clients, for friends, even for my ex's family. It was always the same. Names, numbers, clarity, peace of mind. So when Mom called and said, "We want to make sure everything's fair, could you help us with it?" I said yes. Of course I said yes. I'd been the one paying their taxes for 5 years, helped them refinance the mortgage after Dad's heart surgery. I even managed my brother's student loans when they defaulted in the middle of the pandemic. I didn't say no, not once. So I came over that Saturday, brought my laptop, logged into the template builder. I had no idea what was coming. We sat in the dining room, Dad at the head, Mom beside him, both sipping lukewarm tea like we were reviewing family photos, not documenting a legacy. I asked them what they wanted. They said, "We just want it to be fair." I said, "Okay." I opened the spreadsheet, listed the assets, the house, the cabin, the retirement accounts, Dad's rare coin collection, the life insurance. I divided them equally, 1/3 each to me, Daniel, and Mark. Dad looked up. "Actually," he said, "can you take your name off the asset column?" I blinked. "Sorry?" He shifted. "We've talked about it. Your brothers are still figuring things out. You're already set. You've got the condo, your job. We thought maybe it makes more sense to leave it all to them." My fingers froze on the keyboard. Mom added, "It's not that we don't appreciate you. You've done so much for us. You've always been so strong. But they need more help. You don't." I didn't say anything. I stared at the line of text on the screen. Equal distribution among Evelyn Moore, Daniel Moore, Mark Moore. And slowly I moved the cursor, clicked, backspaced, EVLYN, deleted, line adjusted, formula updated, the numbers recalculated automatically. I felt something inside me do the same. They kept talking about fairness, about family, about how this didn't change how much they loved me. I nodded, smiled even, said, "Of course." Said, "That makes sense." Said, "I just want you to be comfortable with it." I don't remember much else from that day, only that I finished the draft, saved the file, printed the first copy, and then signed as witness. I signed my name beneath the page that confirmed I no longer existed in the legacy of the people who raised me. That night, I went home, poured a glass of wine, and sat on the floor of my living room, the lights off. My phone buzzing with a "thanks again" text from Daniel. Another one from Mark that just said, "Appreciate you, sis." I didn't reply. The week after I filed their paperwork, scheduled the notary, I handled the filings with the probate prep center, sent the required forms to the county. Everything was clean, legal, locked. I sent the final email on a Wednesday morning. The subject line read, "Will, executed, final version, all set." 12 minutes later, Mom sent me a heart emoji. Dad forwarded the confirmation to his golf buddy. I stared at my inbox. The name Evelyn didn't appear once in the will itself, except on the line that said, "Witnessed by." The silence was so complete, it echoed. I didn't tell anyone what it felt like. I didn't tell Hannah, my best friend since college. I didn't tell my therapist. I didn't even write about it in my journal, because to say it out loud would make it real. Instead, I worked. Closed 4 client files that week, reviewed 5 small business returns, baked banana bread I didn't eat, cleaned the fridge, Read one chapter of a novel that had nothing to do with family. On Sunday, I saw Daniel post a photo of the lake house. Ours soon, so grateful. Mark commented with a row of fire emojis. Mom commented, can't wait to see you boys out there again. There was no mention of me. No tag. No thanks to Ev for making it all happen. Just two sons who got a house they never asked for, and a daughter who signed it over before anyone even noticed. I closed the app, closed my laptop, and I let myself say one thing out loud in the dark of my apartment. They didn't cut me out. They asked me to draw the line myself. I didn't cry. I just sat there, wondering how you stay loyal to people who ask you to disappear. Gently, politely, with a smile. I didn't answer their messages at first. The first came a week after I finalized the will. It was from Daniel, titled Quick Question. I didn't open it. Then one from Mom. Hey, sweetie. Small issue with Dad's pension paperwork. Can you take a look? A few hours later, Mark chimed in with, Ev, think something's weird with the house title transfer. Can you double check? I didn't check. I didn't respond. Because for the first time in my life, I realized I wasn't legally obligated to fix the problems they created. I had been the fixer for so long that the silence of not showing up felt like stepping into sunlight after years underground. Warm, blinding. The fourth message came from Dad himself. Ev, some stuff's bouncing back from the county. Think we missed a step? We missed a step. The same we that didn't include me in the list of heirs, the same we that smiled while I deleted my name. Still, I didn't answer. I let the inbox fill. The messages became longer, more urgent. Evelyn, the bank says the trust wasn't recorded correctly. Hey, tax guy says there's an inconsistency with the EIN for the family trust. Can you call him? The insurance people need the original accounting sheets. Do you have backups? They knew I had backups. Of course I did. I was the one who created the structure, built the trust, reconciled the assets. I was the system they stood on, but the system had stepped away. I watched quietly as their messages became more polite, then more desperate. Daniel called, left a voicemail. Look, I know this is weird, but we really need your help, just for a few things. I'll owe you, seriously. I know we didn't handle things perfectly. Mark texted, can we talk? Then Mom called. It rang 5 times, then again. Then again. I didn't answer. Because there was nothing to say that hadn't already been said, just not out loud. It had been said in erasures, in omissions, in a line of text that vanished with one keystroke. The 6th voicemail came on a rainy Tuesday. I was making soup, cutting carrots, the pot bubbling low on the stove. I listened with the volume low. Evelyn, Dad's voice said, I'm sorry we didn't think this through. I think we just assumed you'd always be there, and maybe that was. Then silence. Then, can we fix this? I turned off the stove. Not because I was angry, but because suddenly I couldn't tell whether the steam on my glasses was from the soup or my breath catching in my throat. Can we fix this? A question so simple, but the answer wasn't. Because some things you don't fix. You just stop breaking and hope the pieces learn to stay where they fell. I didn't reply. But the next day I got a call from the notary office. Hi, the woman said, hesitant. You helped the Moore family with their estate plan, right? I did. They asked if we could put them in touch with someone to review some errors. They already had someone, I said. They let her go. She didn't know what to say after that. Neither did I. I didn't plan to see anyone that day. It was a Thursday and I had no meetings. I took the long way home from the grocery store, drove the extra 12 minutes just to avoid passing by the street where my parents lived. Or used to live. I wasn't sure anymore what to call that house. They were still inside it, their names were still on the deed, but mine had never made it past the draft. I parked in front of the cafe near my apartment, the one I rarely entered but always passed by. Something about the handwritten chalkboard outside caught me. A quote. Something simple, People remember how you made them feel. I don't even remember whose quote it was. It didn't matter. What mattered was that for once, I wanted to feel remembered. I went in. It was warm, smelled like cinnamon and something buttery. There were only 4 people seated: 2 college students, a woman typing frantically at her laptop, and a man near the window, alone. I ordered tea. Chamomile again. Always chamomile. I didn't recognize the barista at first, but she recognized me. "Evelyn?" I turned. She smiled. "It's me, Tasha. From Eldridge Foundation?" I blinked. Then the memory slid in. 3 years ago. A grant audit. She'd been the assistant director, frazzled, underfunded, overwhelmed. I had spent 2 weekends helping her clean up her books, didn't charge her, didn't ask for anything in return. She poured the tea. "You saved us," she said quietly. "You probably didn't even know it, but we got another 3 years of funding because of what you did." I didn't know. I said, "You're welcome." Then she looked at me with something I hadn't seen in a long time. Recognition. Not the kind that demands. The kind that sees. "Do you still do that kind of work?" I hesitated. "Not like I used to." She nodded, like she understood that meant more than it sounded. "We have a training next week for young nonprofit directors. We're teaching them how to build systems that don't fall apart when people do." She paused. "Would you speak?" I stared at her. It wasn't a huge ask, just a 15-minute talk, but it felt different. Because no one had asked for my knowledge without also asking for my silence. This wasn't a family favor. This wasn't a call for help. This wasn't, "Can you fix what we broke?" This was, "You matter. What you know matters. We want others to learn from you." I said yes, not out of obligation, but out of something gentler, permission. The following Tuesday, I stood in a sunlit room filled with people I'd never met. They didn't know my family. They didn't know I had been written out of something I helped build. They only knew I could help them build something better. So I spoke not about pain, but about systems, about structure, about how to take care of something that no one notices until it fails. I spoke their language. And somewhere in the middle of explaining ledger audits and sustainable budgeting, I said something I hadn't prepared. Sometimes the people who hold everything together don't have their names on the credits, but the thing still stands because they stayed. A woman in the back nodded. A man looked down and swallowed hard. Afterward, they clapped, not like I'd saved them, but like they heard me. And that was enough. I didn't open the envelope for 3 days. It sat on my desk, quiet, patient, a reminder that even after being written out of their legacy, my name could still arrive in cursive, carefully penned, as if nothing had ever happened. But something had happened, and it had happened in silence, and then in signatures, and then in everything they didn't say. I had learned to live without it. Without them. The first morning, I walked past it. The second, I moved it aside to make space for my tea. The third, I held it in my hands for 5 whole minutes and then set it back down. It wasn't fear. It wasn't bitterness. It was caution, like touching the edge of a wound that's closed but still tender. When I finally opened it, I did so slowly. There was no drama, just clean paper, familiar formatting. And there it was. My name. Not as witness, not as preparer, but as beneficiary. Evelyn Moore, 1/3, equal share, property, liquid, personal items, all named. I folded the will again, slid it back into the envelope, and placed it in the drawer of my desk, beneath a stack of utility bills, behind a small paperweight shaped like a compass that Hannah had given me once, with a note, "For when you stop navigating for everyone else." I didn't cry. I didn't call them. I didn't forward it to anyone or tell a soul, because by the time that paper arrived, I had already rebuilt a life that didn't need permission to be real. That week I started a new habit. Every morning, after tea, I'd write a memory on a blank note card. Not for a memoir, not for legacy, just for me. April 3rd, the sound of rain on the window while I read for no one but myself. May 9th, teaching Mia how to balance a grant sheet. She got it. She lit up. June 17th, laughing at a documentary alone, out loud, for the first time in years. Small things. No audience. No applause. Just proof of living. I put the cards in a jar, called it the record. It didn't hold coins or deeds or titles, but it held what I couldn't forget. The pieces of a life I'd always been told were too quiet to matter. A month later, I got a call from the new family lawyer. "Hi, Evelyn. Your parents asked me to follow up. They mentioned you received the updated will?" I said yes. He paused. "They just wanted to make sure it felt right, that you were okay with it." I thought for a moment. Then I said, "I'm okay. And it doesn't have to feel right." Because that's the thing no one tells you. Sometimes people try to make things right on paper when they realize they can't go back and live them right in real life. And that's fine. Let the ink do what their hands didn't. But I didn't need the paper to tell me who I was anymore. I didn't return to the house, didn't visit the lake, didn't walk back through that kitchen where I first hit delete on my own name. Instead, I walked forward, into newer rooms, on quieter streets, with people who didn't need me to shrink in order to shine. I started helping more nonprofits, not because I needed to feel needed, but because I remembered how good it felt to build something and let it stand without putting my name on it. And sometimes, people did thank me, but it never mattered as much as I thought it would. Because by then, I had thanked myself. The original will still exists, filed, notarized, archived in a drawer somewhere at Jensen & Lowe, and maybe someday, someone will open it and see my name listed, lined up with Daniel and Mark, as if it had always been there. But I'll know it wasn't. Not the first time. And that matters. Not because I want to hold a grudge, but because remembering where you were erased from is the only way to fully understand where you belong. A year to the day after I deleted my name, I wrote a new document. Not a legal one. Just a page in my journal. This is my legacy. A life lived without applause, a name whispered in empty rooms that were kept standing by hands no one praised. I was not just the help, I was the foundation. Then I closed the book, lit a candle, and for the first time in years I breathed, like I didn't owe anyone anything, not even an explanation. It took me a year to even think about writing a will of my own. Not because I had much. I didn't own property, no stocks, no great inheritance waiting to be passed down. Just a small account, a tiny studio I rented month by month, a few photos, a box of receipts from nonprofit work. But I started thinking about what it meant to leave something behind. Not what could be touched, but what could be carried. What parts of me would echo if I didn't write them down. One morning, I sat with a legal pad. Not the kind I use to draw up documents, but the yellow-lined kind you find at the back of a drawer, slightly curled at the corners. I wrote one sentence at the top. If I leave anything, let it be this. Then I stopped, stared. The sun was rising across the wall in golden lines, the street below buzzed with the start of life, and I, for the first time in years, didn't feel erased. So I kept writing. Not legal instructions, just lines. I leave behind the ability to walk away without burning the bridge, just quietly deciding it's not yours to cross anymore. I leave behind the recipe for banana bread, the good kind, the one I only baked for people I couldn't say I love you to directly. I leave behind a folder full of care no one asked for and no one knew what to do with. It doesn't need to be found. I already lived it. I leave behind forgiveness, not for what was done, but for what was never going to be done anyway. Somewhere in that list, the grief stopped sounding like grief. It started sounding like freedom.